Hi folks, I'm out in one of the more swampy areas of my farm, more wetland. I'm along the northwestern boundary line, and I was down in here the other day looking for a lost dog, whole other story. And what happened is I came across this. It looks like to me that it's some kind of waterfowl nest or roosting area or something. As you can see, it looks like it's been here for a while. It's been a number of years since I've been down here in this particular area. Probably should walk the boundaries every year, but I don't get around to it always. So the issue is, this is on my property. The property line is about 30 feet beyond this thing in front of the camera. I'll show you that in a minute. I found the two property line stakes that are out here, and through this area there isn't any marking along here, of course, but what I'm dealing with is people who own the land on the opposite side is that family of lawyers who's been after my property for a long time, and they've never had any respect for legal boundary lines. So I'm guessing that probably one of them came and put this in here. I can't prove it, of course, and I'm not worried so much about it. I mean, it's not like it's anything harmful. I do like the nature, but if they're putting it there to try to attract ducks or whatever for hunting purposes, they're doing it on my property, and that's the issue. So I will probably remove it. I need to confirm with one other friend to make sure he didn't put it here, but people shouldn't come onto your property and do whatever they feel like, you know what I mean? So this is one of the drawbacks of living out in the country. Sometimes you get these yahoos who aren't country folks who have money to buy property, and suddenly they think they can act like they're in the city. So this is something that I think will be removed, but I'll come back to you when I can show you where the property markers are. In fact, I can show you the one right here. I might as well just walk to it. This whole area here was flooded out again. You can see the garbage that came down the creek when it flooded out. With the flooding that we've had, I'm very close to the major creek that flows through our farm. That it's a polluted creek from years and years of mining upstream. But at any rate, the property stake that I was talking about is right here. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera. Just happened to be this Clorox jug that was laying here, so I just left it here so I could see it easily. And then straight ahead in the distance, I'll take you over there in a minute, is another one. So I can triangulate the line pretty well just for these 2 points. Let's see if I can kind of put myself paralleling the line or right next to it. So if we're drawing the property line, essentially it would be straight ahead through there, hitting those hemlocks on the other side of the pond. But as you can see, that thing is clearly well over the line. So let me come back to you. I'm going to jazz these up. I'm going to put some spray paint. I don't know if it's too cold for that or not. I'll try spray paint and orange ribbons on to remark the posts. These were put in by a surveyor friend who did a survey of the farm when the lawyer tried to steal the land back in the 1970s. So they've been here ever since, and I've maintained them on and off over the years. I probably should do it every couple of years. I just don't always get out to do it. But if you own property, this is a very important thing. Keep your boundary lines marked. That will head off all kinds of trouble. If you have your property posted that you don't want trespassers or hunters on it, keep those up to speed too, because they'll always claim ignorance, saying, I didn't see anything, I didn't know where the lines were. And it's all a crock because they just want to go onto your property. So to protect your property, maintain your boundary lines, have things clearly marked, and then there are no excuses for anybody. Plus it sends a message to anybody who'd want to come on, okay, this is being watched. So at any rate, I'm behind the curve in doing this. I'm going to do that and I'll come back to you. Alright, here's the other stake I was telling you about. See another galvanized piece of pipe, the old ribbon on it. I'm right along the banks of this creek. This is one of the tragedy stories of the history of our farm right here. This creek, I am told from stories that my great-great-grandfather told my grandmother, was that this was one of the best trout streams in the state at one point. Cold water, spring fed, great for trout. And people before the era of cars used to ride trains into our area to come up and fish. Probably fly fishing, I don't know for sure. Fish it. But what happened is deep coal mining. And in addition to that, there was a lot of spill off from coal silt, because what happened was, I'm sorry, I got distracted. There was a combine driving on the road over there. Don't know where he's going this time of year. It's long since anything was in the field to harvest. What happened was the coal processing plants, they used to call them coal breakers, where they'd bring the chunks of coal out of the mines and break them to proper sizes. There are different grades of coal size-wise for different applications, different kinds of stoves or furnaces. They used a lot of water in their processing, and of course there was a lot of waste because of that. You know, they just wanted the chunks, the fine powdery stuff, the little flecks of coal, they just washed away. And what happened is, I was told by a surveyor friend of mine, when all of the coal breakers in this area were running at maximum, processing the most coal, this stream's normal flow rate was at 100-year flood stage, because there was so much water being pumped through the coal processing plants and then discharged into the stream that it raised the levels that high. Now it put a lot of toxins into the water, a lot of heavy metals, and also when there would be flooding, a lot of the silt from those processing plants just washed along the banks here. You can see by the color of the dirt there's still a lot of a fine coal powder and sand mix. It's very low grade, so it's not really all that valuable to try to reclaim. But what ended up happening here is also, from the deep mines, sometimes they would strike groundwater and they would tap into an aquifer. And what would happen then is you had basically created a spring from the deep water, or an artesian well, if you will. And there was just no way to seal all those off once the groundwater was exposed. So what happened was a lot of water came from deep within the earth, deeper than perhaps you'd normally expect. And mixed in with that was an awful lot of chemical residue. Iron, manganese, copper, sulfur, a number of things. And that's why the water has turned the color it has, because there's still all this mine water leaching up out of the ground and is now in this stream. Sadly, there's no way to change this. Now, it has cleaned up over the years, obviously, because there's no more coal mining happening. So they're not continuing to pollute. But there still are these fissures in the ground where the groundwater's coming out with all these chemicals. And truth be told, this isn't as polluted as it once was, because there are occasionally some fish in here. A number of years ago I tried it one time and I did catch some small minnows in here, and when we've had some flooding, somehow we've had things like catfish and carp that have come up the stream and ended up in some of the tidal ponds or the settling ponds here, so they must have come up from the river. So it's not completely dead in that sense. It's considered a dead stream by the EPA, which is fine. because it's never going to be anything that's profitable. Now, one of the other things that happened with this too is all the little towns that were upstream from here, and probably some downstream too, had no city sewer systems. The sewer system for the towns was a big pipe that ended up here in the stream. So you had all this raw sewage being dumped into here as well. Now that sounds horrible, but that's the way humanity did things for thousands of years at cities. I mean, you know, London, Rome, Paris, all those cities, the sewers were basically just big underground pipes that ended up in the rivers, you know, whether the Thames or the Seine or the Tiber. They just dumped their sewer in there, and the pollution happened. So fortunately, what has gone on is over the years, DEP, and EPA probably, have required a lot of these towns to put in sewer processing plants, so the sewer treatment plants. So I don't know how much raw sewage is still being dumped in here, probably not a whole lot, but that's also cleaned things up a bit too, the fact that they put the sewer treatment plants in and it's not just raw sewage anymore. So this is part of my farm that's kind of scrub land. I can't do much with it. It's all in the floodplain. I was told that before the coal processing plants really got into operation and the ground got flooded with a lot of the silt, that this was the bottom land. This was the most fertile land on the farm, and of course I'm sure it was. But a lot of the topsoil got stripped away and the clay underneath just remained, and then the silt covered it over. But God, being who he is, has put into this ecosystem the ability to regenerate. And all these trees that you see here, now this one straight ahead of me, this is a, I believe it's a scarlet oak, or what they call a pin oak. There at the base, it's probably about 15, 18 inches. Well, the real base where it flares out, it's more, but say chest height, it's probably about 15, 18 inches in diameter. So that's been growing for a while. Obviously right next to the water it would. And as you can see, there are other trees that have grown up. When I was a kid, this was mostly just all open coal silt flats. So it has regenerated. I've walked through a few acres of this. I'm about 300-400 yards north of the house and the barn. And that was all open. Now it's growing back, and there's some beautiful looking oaks, there's some beautiful looking white pines and some other trees. Originally it was just scrub, mostly scrub white birch, because they like acid soil, and this stream is very acidic. But now it's changed. Now it's a variety of trees that are growing in here. So eventually this will be profitable land, and again, in the sense that it'll be good timberland. Maybe every 20 years I can come in and spot harvest like I did before. It'll make some nice timber, I hope. And we can at least use that part of the land. So it'll never be profitable farmland again. And this stream will never be a pristine trout stream again. But this is one of the results of when you get people who put profit above ecology. Now again, I'm not an environmentalist kook, but the big coal companies that ravaged this land were not local folks. They came from the big cities, and they they wanted the coal to provide. It was hard coal, anthracite coal. They wanted it to provide heat for everybody in the towns and cities and the factories. And so they just went to where it was, exploited what they had to exploit, hauled it by rail car to where they needed to use it, and that was it. And now once the main coal veins were depleted and the deep mining wasn't continuing, there's an era now of some strip mining, but not as much. But that's the result you get, and this is an example of it. Do I wish it was nicer water? Of course. This would be great for all kinds of recreation. I mean, you could, some places it's probably deep enough you could raft down or tube down if it was nice water. It'd certainly be great for fishing and game. We have had beavers come up and down here. I've seen many places on the farm here, in this part of the farm, where there's beaver sign. They stay for a while and then they move on. So it's not completely polluted, but still is not what it could be. So let me finish fixing this post and then I'll show you my plan. Alright, I'm standing approximately right on the line here. You see the near post, and in the distance between those trees I think you can see the orange from the next one. So I'm getting a reference point to know where my property line runs once it goes past that duck blind or whatever it is, duck nest. Alright, I'll come back. Okay, well, I'm starting to lose my light here, and my battery. You can see there's a major deer highway that's coming right through here. Look at this path. And they're going right down through the swamp here to avoid people. And the other thing I wanted to point out is a lot of this backwater here this is a long pond that goes maybe 100 yards, 150, 200 yards up along this bank. It was originally part of a mill race back in the early 1800s when they diverted part of that other creek over there so that they could have a water-powered sawmill, I believe it was, on the farm long before my family had it. But these backwater areas here that you see, this isn't just from flooding. You can see there's some more over in there. A lot of this was engineered by the beavers when they were in here. When they were here, in full force, a lot of where I'm standing was completely underwater. They had ponded up this whole area. Now, it's been a number of years since they were in here, so some of it's drained out, but this is amazing engineering work that they were able to do this. This would be wonderful. You could scoop all this out and make a nice big pond in here, but the problem with that pond over there is that the springs that feed it dry up in the summertime and it scales over with a lot of algae. So it's just not great for fish. I mean, some native fish can handle it, but trout probably wouldn't survive. I don't know if bass would. I mean, we've had catfish and carp and sunnies and bluegills and what they call a native trout, or the chubs or the minnows in there over the years, but some we put in as kids. But I wouldn't try anything else just because of the summertime. So at any rate, I'm almost out of battery. I just wanted to show you this problem I have to deal with here and how I marked my line. Again, you can see I have a couple other more ribbons put on trees to show exactly where the line is, and hopefully that will keep people away that shouldn't be here. I'll have to come back with no trespassing signs perhaps, just to reinforce the property line. Alright, thank you for watching, and thank you for supporting our channel.